Hare Krishna. We're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, entitled Remembrance of Lord Krishna. We're in text 20. It's June 5th, 2022. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead. Narayana to Narayan reached the supremest human being unto Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat, Yutamashloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Text 20, Chapter 2, Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Tata, Eva Cha, Anye, Naraloka, Dhira, Ye, Ahave, Krishna, Mukha Aravindam, Nitrai, Pibanta, Nayana Abhiramam, Partha, Astraputa, Padam, Apu, Asya, Tataiva Chanye Naraloka Vira, Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam, Etrai Pibanto Nayanabhiramam, Parthastraputa Paramapurasya, Tataiva Chanye Naraloka Vira, Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam, Nitrai Pibanto Nayanabhiramam, Parthastraputa Padam Apurasya, Tetaiva Chanye Naraloka Vira, Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam, Nitrai Pibanto Nayanabhiranam, Parthastraputa Padamapurasya, Tataiva Chanye Naraloka Vira, Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam, Netrai Pibanto Nayanabhiramam, Parthastraputa Padam Apurasya, Tetaiva Chanye Naraloka Vira, Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam, Netrai Pibanto Nayanabhiramam, Parthastraputa Padam Apurasya. What's someone online?
Naraloka Vira.
Tataiva Chanye Naraloka Vira,
Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam,
Ya Ahave Krishna Mukharavindam,
Try Pibanto Nayanabhiramam,
Netrai Pibanto Nayanabhiramam,
Parthastraputa Padam Apurasya,
Parthastraputa Padam Apurasya. Okay, we'll go to the word for word meanings, text 20, chapter 2, canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Tata, as also, evacha, and certainly, anye, others, naraloka, human society, vira, fighters, yea, those, ahave, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna, Lord Krishna's, Mukha Arvindam, face like a lotus flower, Netrai, with the eyes, Pibanta, while seeing, Nayana Abhiramam, very pleasing to the eyes, Partha, Arjuna, Astraputa, purified by arrows, Padam, abode, Apu, achieved, Asya, of him. Translation. Certainly others who were fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, E.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, appears in this world for two missionary purposes: to deliver the faithful and to annihilate the miscreants. But because the Lord is absolute, his two different kinds of actions, although apparently different, are ultimately one and the same. His annihilation of a person like Shishupal is as auspicious as his actions for the protection of the faithful. All the warriors who fought against Arjuna, but who were able to see the lotus-like face of the Lord on the battlefield, achieved the abode of the Lord, exactly as the devotees of the Lord do. The words pleasing to the eyes of the seer are very significant. When the warriors from the other side of the battlefield saw Lord Krishna at the front, they appreciated his beauty, and their dormant instinct of love of God was awakened. Shishupal saw the Lord also, but he saw him as his enemy, and his love was not awakened. Therefore, Shishupal achieved oneness with the Lord by merging in the impersonal glare of his body called the Brahmagyoti. Others who were in that marginal position, being neither friends nor enemies, but slightly in love of Godhead by appreciating the beauty of his face, were at once promoted to the spiritual planets of the Vaikunthas. The Lord's personal abode is called Goloka Vrindavan, and the abodes where his plenary expansions reside are called the Vaikunthas, where the Lord is present as Narayan. Love of Godhead is dormant in every living entity, and the entire process of devotional service unto the Lord is meant for awakening this dormant eternal love of Godhead. But there are degrees of such transcendental awakening. Those whose love of God is awakened to the fullest extent go back to the Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky, whereas persons who have just awakened to love of Godhead by accident or association are transferred to the Vaikuntha planets. Essentially, there's no material difference between Goloka and Vaikuntha, but in the Vaikunthas, the Lord is served in unlimited opulence, whereas in Goloka, the Lord is served in natural affection. This love of God is awakened by the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Here, the word partastraputa is significant. Those who saw the beautiful face of the Lord on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified, first by Arjuna, when he made his onslaught with arrows. The Lord appeared for the mission of diminishing the burden of the world, and Arjuna was assisting the Lord by fighting on his behalf. Arjuna personally declined to fight, and the whole instruction of the Bhagavad Gita was given to Arjuna to engage him in the fight. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna agreed to fight in preference to his own decision. And thus Arjuna fought to assist the Lord in his mission of diminishing the burden of the world. All the activities of a pure devotee are executed on behalf of the Lord because a pure devotee of the Lord has nothing to do for his personal interest. Arjuna's killing was as good as killing by the Lord himself. As soon as Arjuna shot an arrow at an enemy, that enemy became purified of all material contaminations and became eligible to be transferred to the spiritual sky. Those warriors who appreciated the lotus feet of the Lord and saw his face at the front had their dormant love of God awakened, and thus they were transferred at once to Vaikuntha Loka, not to the impersonal stage of Brahmagyoti, as was Shishupal. Shishupal died without appreciating the Lord, while others died with appreciation of the Lord. Both were transferred to the spiritual sky, but those who awakened to love of God were transferred to the planets of the transcendental sky. Uddhava seemingly lamented that his own position was less than that of the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because they had attained to Vaikuntha, whereas he remained to lament the disappearance of the Lord. Okay, we're studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 20. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Kadhamayam Darati Svapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaraganathadvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpate Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 20. Tataiva Chanye Nariloka Viraya Ahave Krishna Mukhara Vindam Netrai Pibanto Nayana Biramam Partastra Puta Padam Apur Asya. Certainly others who were fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. Okay. All right. So in the verse, and the word for word, and several times in the purport, Prabhupada's talking about how those warriors opposing the Pandavas and Arjuna, they appreciated Krishna's beauty. Krishna was driving the chariot. Krishna was driving the chariot, and so they awaken their dormant instinct of love of God. So he says that many, many times. So this is okay. Okay, so we have about a dozen participants online, and here there's Mother Malini and Bhaktin Casey here at Malini Ashram in Alachua. So this is what's coming to me is that this is a meditation. This is a meditation, okay? And now, oftentimes, like with clients, coaching clients, and be like, looking at their lives, and they'll go, yes, so like what am I doing? What am I doing to enrich my lives? And I'll be like, oh, I do meditation. And so basic principles, open-ended questions lead to concreteness. And so some questions that I find I like to ask is, what do you meditate on? What do you meditate on? Otherwise, okay. And sometimes that takes them aback. I've experienced this. And the answer is a sort of whatever. I know I've had this experience, and it's spiritual, but there's something kind of amorphous, and okay. Or you meditate, and what's the goal of your meditation? Open-ended question, inviting concreteness. And also there's often, it's kind of assumed, and what's the goal of your meditation? And it's just, yeah. And okay. So, of course, I don't mean to be too cynical, just a little cynical. And I know when I go here in discussions, I am sometimes I've been criticized, and people have said, well, David, all you're doing in what you're saying is revealing what an ignorant fool you are. No, I've heard that. Yes. It's from the peanut gallery. There's affirmation. Okay. It's just like, no, I've heard that. I've been criticized. You just don't understand about meditation.
There is no way.
Yeah, right. Okay. So, and then, and it certainly, I'm not trying to contest the assertion that I'm an ignorant fool. Still, just sharing authentically. Okay. To go further into it. Okay, well, no, like I meditate on my breath. It's Bhagavad Gita. It's there, meditating the breath. I meditate on the flame of the candle. I have that smirk, don't I? Okay, I do. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, no, and this was like, even before I came to like Bhakti or Krishna consciousness, I'd be like, why would I want to meditate on my breath? Again, it's just me. No, really. Why would I want to meditate on the No, for peace. Okay, no. Okay, but
there's a goal.
Yeah, okay. So then they've goal. So Bhakti in case said for peace. Now, okay, and I understand there's truth and validity there. Like, even if we're not meditating, we take a walk in nature and we meditate on the birds chirping. And of course, this nature and the flame, it is all part of God, and like that. Sure, and it's peace because, or another thing is like, just notice your thoughts. Why in the world would I want to meditate on my thoughts? Oh my God, no, really, like if there's something not spiritual, it's my thoughts. Why would I want to meditate there? Okay, so of course I understand any sort of meditation. It can lead to a sort of peace, and it does, because we're getting away from those gross sources of anxiety. I need to cards. What about money? What about this? What about this person and this relationship and my health? And we're taking the mind away from those kind of obvious sources of anxiety. Meditate on the flame of the candle. Notice my thoughts. Realize I'm the observer. So I get that there's benefit in that discipline. Okay. Yes. Okay. And then right. And so then the goal is peace. The goal is peace. It's described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Mukti Sri Kami. Sakaliya Shanta. Krishna Bhakti Nishkama. Ata Eva Shanta. So that as long as we retain any material desires are those desires that agitate and disturb the mind. there won't be peace. So even if we try to escape for some time, we might get some temporary peace, there's value, but we're still left with those material desires. And only one who's, well, Prabhupada uses the term, he's referring to Arjuna. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna agreed to fight in preference to his own decision. And thus Arjuna fought to assist the Lord in his mission of diminishing the burden of the world. So, like desire to please Krishna, desire to please God, it's not a desire in the material sense. It's the natural flow. It's the natural expression of the soul in enlightenment, in self-realization. That then there's peace. Really. So that's it's described also in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Nityasiddha Krishna Prema Sajika Bunoi Shravanadi Shuddhachite Karye Udai. And that describes that love of Krishna is eternally situated within the hearts of all living entities. It's not something to be gotten from some external source. And it's awakened by this process of Shuddhachite, Shravanadi Shuddhachite, of Shinvatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravan Kirtan, of hearing and kirtan, Shravanam Kirtan, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Padasevam. It's awakened by the hearing. That's the fundamental processes. So that's why it's just like this Krishna consciousness. It's so natural. It's awakening. We talk about in Safato programs, like, since the 1970s, I've experienced two approaches to transformation: the blank slate approach, where the idea is at the core we're nothing, and on the foundation of that nothing, we can create any reality we choose. So that's not Bhagavatam, that's not Bhagavad Gita. So where we come from in transformative communication, not the blank slate approach, the diamond approach. At the core, we're not nothing. At the core, metaphorically, we're a diamond. We're a diamond. There's a book by Saint Teresa from the Catholic tradition, the Teresa from like 900 years ago. And it's a book called The Interior Castle. And the whole book's based on the metaphor that the soul is a diamond with 7 mansions, and in the innermost mansion, the soul is serving and loving God with pure devotion. Like that. So it's very, very Vedic, very, very Goswami-like. Okay, and so transformation is a process of uncovering that natural love of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? So that at the very substratum of existence, the very ground of existence, just like, we talk a lot about, like, let's not be superficial, let's not be shallow. And as long as we're relating to ourselves and others as if we're the body, well, that's superfluous, even if we're having deep, deep conversations, because it's just a fact. Yeah, because the whole thing is based on just a very superfluous misunderstanding of our core identity. Okay, so that to realize we're not the body, we're spirit, and then even more than that, not just spirit as in the oneness, which has its truth, but we're individual. We're just in the Tvevaham Jatuna Samna Tvamna Mejanadi Pana Chevana Bhavishima Sarvevayam Takpram. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings on the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. So Krishna is saying that we're eternally distinctive spiritual personalities. So that gets to the core. And we can go even deeper, even more to the ground, even more to the fundamental essence of our existence, that the source of our source, that's what's called Paramatma, that's called Super Soul. And even we can go deeper than that, right? And then, okay, there's Bhagavan, okay, Vasudeva, Sri Krishna has appeared as the chariot driver of Arjuna. This transcendental, okay, nothing is not the ground of existence. Matter, protons and electrons, is not the very ground of existence. It's still shallow. Okay. Even the oneness of spirit is not the very ground. Even the spirit soul is not the ground. Even the super soul. But Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Shanta Sadaiva Ridaye Shuddhi Lokayanti Yam Shama Sundarama Chincha Gunasvarupam. Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Brahma prays, I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, who is Shyamasundar, Krishna himself, possessing innumerable transcendental attributes, in whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. So we realize the very core of our existence through this eyes, through cultivating eyes of devotion tinged with the salve of love. Okay, so getting back to meditating on the candle, which can provide some peace. So these warriors on the battlefield, right? So they're doing all sorts of warrior stuff, arrows and defending and horses, and they're doing yoga meditation. Krishna says to Arjuna, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mamanushmara yudhicha marapita mano buddhir mamiveshasi samshaya. Says to Arjuna, he says, think of me, meditate on me, and fight. And meditate on me, and not one or the other. No, meditate on me and fight. So to fulfill our dharma in all spheres and meditate on Krishna. That's meditation. Now, so like, for me, and that when I started reading Prabhupada's books like that, and okay, this is like a meditation that makes sense, but it's not a process of elimination. It's a process of engagement. It's a process of transformation. We say, even like any multimedia presentation, the idea is that the more senses engaged in an activity, the easier it is for the mind to focus. So here the warriors, their sense of sight is focused on the very substratum of existence, the transcendental personal form of Sri Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. And that meditation, it's the journey and it's the goal. It's the journey and it's the goal. So we're meditating on the names of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And that primarily we're guided to meditate on the name. It's like the easiest doorway. And there's no Namo Chintamini Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigra Purna Shuru Nityan Mukto Vinad Van Namanamina. There's no difference. There's distinction and identity. No difference between the name, because that's what absolute means. No difference between the name, the form, the qualities, and the pastimes. So meditating on any of them, this is smarana. It's the journey to the goal, and it's the goal. Both. Right? Yeah. Chanting Hare Krishna, it's a prayer, and it's simultaneously the answer to a prayer. Because the essence of the mood of chanting Hare Krishna, please Krishna, please engage me in your service. Okay, and what's the fundamental service? Chanting Hare Krishna. So it's a prayer, and it's the answer to the prayer simultaneously.
So I was having a conversation with a friend who doesn't believe that there's a God outside of herself.
Okay.
And then I heard a lecture from Sachinanda Swami that said we all worship some kind of God, whether it's Paramatma, the God in our heart. And so I guess I don't know exactly what my question is, but it's something along the lines of like, what would be your argument for that? Like your debate of like, no, there's no other entity outside of me.
Okay. Online, did you hear Bhaktin Casey? Some indication.
Yes.
Thank you, Anandini. Okay. Well, okay. Well, so I might want to get a further understanding. So are you saying there's no God outside of you? Or you mean like?
It was kind of like the only peace and love are the same thing, but my idea of God is like myself.
Okay, yeah. All right. So there's truth there. There's truth. There's a place in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna and Prabhupada, they say you're God, your grandmother's God, your grandfather's God. That's in Bhagavad Gita. It's true. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta mortina matstani sarbutin nacham veshtesha. Krishna says, yes, I pervade everything, both in personal and impersonal forms. It's very clear. Okay, and so there's truth. And it's not a complete truth. Okay. So I might invite the person to consider, just, let's consider. So, all right. So let's say, basic argument of organization and structure. If we look at this watch, do we assume that it formed by the wind blowing and whoosh, there was this watch? No, there's intelligence behind it. There's intelligence, right? Okay, we assume that. Okay, so now if we look at the level of structure, the level of organization of, say, the veins of the leaf or the rotation of the planets, it's hundreds of trillions of times greater than the intelligence behind this watch. Okay, it's logic. All right? And so, all right, so logic would indicate that there's a person, that there's an entity, an intelligent entity behind the veins of the leaf and the rotation of planets, far greater than the person and intelligence behind this watch. Okay. So looking at myself, I can know, like, that's not me. I mean, I'd be challenged to create this watch. So, like, it wasn't me who, like, designed, the precision of the rotation of the planets, or even like one cell. So that's me. Like, I'm going to take credit for that. I'm going to take credit for it. Like, that seems pompous, arrogant, and like I belong. I should be institutionalized, actually. Okay. So it indicates that there's some entity that's far greater than me. Okay. And so this process of bhakti, it's about, it's a way to get to know that entity. And we're not completely separate, just like the sun rays and the sun globe, right? And we can say, here it is early morning in North Florida. We can say, oh, the sun's coming into Marie's living room. It's true, because the sun rays are non-different from the sun globe. So me, mame vamsho jigalo ke jiva bhuta sanatana, manasasthanindriyani prakrtistani karshati. So me, I'm part and parcel of this greater entity. I'm not completely different, and I'm not exactly the same. So that gets to be a more nuanced, complete understanding. I am God in the complete, it was me who created the rotation. Like, no, that's not really satisfying. It's just not common sense, not grounded. But there's truth in the sense that I am the absolute. I'm part and parcel, like the sun rays are part of the sun globe. So yeah, so we're not completely different than the complete absolute, and we're not exactly the same. So what's the difference? What's the sameness? To realize how we're the same and how we're different, and to realize more and more about that supreme intelligence, the person behind that supreme intelligence. I love nature. Okay, you have your nature. So nature means that it's someone's nature. Oh, who is this person? Just like we might appreciate a painting. Okay, but then we can see that it would be kind of like, so a lack of gratitude, like, there's no painter behind the painting. No, like, let's appreciate the painting of this landscape or whatever. And like, wow, yeah, there's a painter. I'd like to get to know him or her. Man, what's the process? The process, well, we gain their love and trust. They choose to reveal themselves. So that's bhakti. That through serving this higher intelligence, then the absolute reveals himself to us. So we can believe that there's no higher intelligence behind the rotation of planets. That belief would require blind faith. Reasonable trust, reasonable faith means that there's a higher intelligence. And then it's natural to be curious. Wow, how can I get to know more about that entity? So that's a process here. I appreciate your question, Casey, because so like my response mainly was around logic. Okay. And so we want to, in the line of Srila Prabhupada, for any of these principles in Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness, we want to be so clear to be able to explain it with reference to logic, analysis, and rationality. And simultaneously, we want to be able to share it in terms of, here's my personal experience. Here's my personal experience. And, just like, we like how come mantra would make sense, like that. Okay. And then, okay, and here's my personal, like actually, yes, since I'm chanting Hare Krishna mantra, I'm a lot more peaceful and happier. So personal experience, that's powerful. Krishna says, Shushukam Kartumaviyam. Says, this is the perfection of real religion, because it's directly experienced. It's not just, what group do you belong to? I believe, I don't believe. Okay, so these are ways of knowing: personal experience and logic, analysis, like the empirical method, which is logic and experience, experiment. Okay, and also we want to be able to share and move and communicate effectively any of these principles based on higher authority, based on Shastra. All three. We want to become expert in all three, in any of the points. Okay, it's just like, let's say, a basic fundamental point. I'm not this body, I'm spirit soul. Okay, so based on Shastra, right towards the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Dehinasmin yata dehe kamaram yovinam jara tata dehantara praptir dirasthatranamuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body, from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. Okay, so that's it. So Bhagavad Gita says, that's it. And so we want to be able to based on Prabhupada's teachings, based on Shastra, to establish any point. Okay, now, many people go, well, I don't have any trust in that source. And you say, I'm just going to believe what some book says. Most of the population's like that. Okay. At the same time, even population like that, when we back up what we say with authoritative source, it makes an impression. I even people, well, I don't believe that, I don't like that, but it makes an impression. Oh, this isn't just like something that started with the flower children in the 60s. Like, oh, this is solid. Okay. But still, I don't believe. So many people, their faith is in logic. Or for many people, like they'll move, like share your personal experience. So that's why, like at the beginning of many of our programs, imagine you're looking at a photo of yourself from when you were 5 years old. When you look at that photo, do you say, who is that stranger? No, you say, oh, that's Casey that's David when I was 5. Now, we know logic, science. There's not one molecule in the body now that was there when you were 5. Still, there's some constant identity I call David. Okay, that indicates that identity is completely not material. We can say the body grew. No, that's an illusion. That's an illusion, right? The part that all the molecules, all the atoms completely switched. So the constant identity. And I can share from experience. Like I don't have too much realization. Same time, I've been practicing this process for about 40 years, and I experience myself as that irreducible quantum of consciousness and not the body. I experience that, and that's a very joyful experience. I experienced that a lot more than I did 40 years ago, or even a year ago. So this process gives me an experience. So experience, logic, and Shastra, right? And then, because that's what it says, Prabhupada writes here, as a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna agreed to fight in preference to his own decision. And thus Arjuna fought to assist the Lord in his mission of diminishing the burden of the world. So Arjuna, he had his, let's call it his 9 dots, his box of conditioning. First chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and it was based on Dharma and virtue. Okay. And then ultimately he said, okay, look, here he realized, Rapanya dosha patasvabhava prichamitvam dhammasamuda chetayat shreyasyan. He said, Bhui tanme shishastayam sadimam prapana. And ultimately was, okay, Krishna, I'm confused about my duty, and I've lost my composure due to weakness in this condition. I ask you, please guide me. Now I'm your disciple. I'm your shishya. Please guide me. So he's saying, look, I'm in the presence of the supreme authority. So let me follow. And so that requires, because like this logic and experience, these are ways to get knowledge. They're not perfect ways to get knowledge. Hearing from bona fide authority, that's a perfect, infallible way to get knowledge. And our logic and experience can supplement and complement and reinforce that supreme knowledge coming from what's called Shabda Brahman, like that. And when it's not congruent, then as we develop more and more trust in this process, just like, let's say, like if I'm trying to get from here to New York, okay, so that's the map. You go, okay, well, it says, okay, it'll be a I-95, and they can go north on I-95 in Jackson. Then you'll hit a border called Georgia. Okay, then you'll come to, South Carolina. Okay, so there's been 80 landmarks, and the map's right every time. So I might say, well, I don't have a direct experience that if I keep going, I'll hit something called Maryland, but I'm trusting the map now. So as we develop more and more trust in the process, we enthusiastic, like Arjuna, we trust this source of authority as powerful to support me to transcend the 9 dots of my psychophysical conditioning in this lifetime and for many lifetimes. So logic, experience, and Shastra or Shabda Brahman. Yeah, and so this is a and so just like, for example, we just did some logic, right, in response to Bhakti and Casey, that it makes sense that there's a supreme, that there's a person with higher intelligence behind the rotation of the planets. Okay, so that's logic. All right, now at the same time, then there's that beyond our, for example, we just hear in the morning with Govinda prayers, Benum Kvanantam Aravinda Dalaya Taksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobam Govinda Mari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept at playing on his flute with blooming eyes like lotus petals and head bedecked with peacock feather, whose figure of beauty is tinged with the hue of dark blue rain clouds and whose unique loveliness is charming millions of cupids. So that's coming from the authority of Sri Brahma, Brahma Samhita. So we can apply our logic, for thousands of lifetimes, and we won't come to the conclusion that supreme person. We can come to the conclusion that there is a supreme person with intelligence higher than I, which can come to that indication. But we won't come to the conclusion, no matter how much we try, that supreme person likes to dress himself with a peacock feather. So that's revealed knowledge. That comes from revealed knowledge. Right? We won't come to the conclusion that he gets unlimited transcendental nectarian joy by playing the flute. So this comes from those who are experiencing. This comes from those who are experiencing that. Right? So this is just like that one verse from Brahma Samhita. It's a meditation. It's a meditation. Oh, okay. Krishna, blooming eyes like lotus petals, adept at playing on his flute. Head bedecked with peacock feather, whose figure of beauty is tinged with the hue of dark blue rain clouds, and whose unique loveliness is charming millions of cupids. So it's a yoga meditation. And for me, that meditation makes sense. The other meditations, they have their place to lead to this meditation. Otherwise, it's just like some escape, so I get the peace that comes from some relief, and then I just go back trying to fulfill these agitating desires. And then let me do some meditation again. But this meditation is not just an escape from matter. This is absorption in the natural, loving, spontaneous play of divine devotion of the soul. So those warriors, they're in the battle of Kurukshetra, even though they were inimical to Krishna's team, the Pandavas, but they were meditating on Krishna. Alola Chandrakala Satpanamalya Vamsi Ratnangaram Banayakeli Kalavilasam Shamam Shibangalalitani Atapakasham Govinda Mari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor, round whose neck This one's a flower garland. This is a meditation for the eyes. Beautified by the moon locket, with hands bedecked with beautiful jeweled ornaments and the flute, who always revels in pastimes of love, and whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundar is eternally manifest. This is yoga. This is this is the goal. This is the journey, and this is the goal. And so this is a meditation that involves sight and prasadam, the whole prasadam, preparing prasadam for Krishna, tasting prasadam. It's meant to be a meditation, not supposed to be just greedily satisfying my tongue. So it's like meditation. There are pastimes in Chaitanya Charitamrita about how the devotees, they're consuming copious amounts of prasad, and it's truly a meditative experience. We offer incense. It's a meditation of the nostrils, it's a meditation of the sense of fragrance. Okay, so these warriors were absorbed in the beauty of Krishna. So it's very positive. It's not denying the senses. It's engaging the senses spiritually, and that's distinctive to this path of bhakti. And Prabhupada, there's different degrees, like in an earlier verse, just this verse which we read 2 days ago about Shishupal, that he got impersonal liberation because he didn't come to appreciate Krishna, but because he was killed by Krishna, the soul that is Shishupal merged into the body of Krishna. Okay, then there's Vaikuntha and the Vaikuntha Lokas, and then Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, I'll read this verse again. Tataiva chanyena raloka vira ya ahave Krishna mukara vindam nitrai bibanto nayana viramam partastra puta padam apurasya. Certainly others who were fighters on the battlefield of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. Hare Krishna. Thanks for your presence and attention. I welcome any comments, realizations, inspirations, or questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, Casey.
It's about this part at the end of the first paragraph.
Yeah.
So it says, those whose love of God there are degrees of such transcendental awakening. Those whose love of God is awakened to the fullest extent go back to Goloka Vrindavan planet in the spiritual sky. Whereas persons who have just awakened to love of Godhead by accident or association are transferred to the Vaikuntha planets.
Yeah.
Essentially, there is no material difference between Goloka and Vaikuntha, but in the Vaikunthas, the Lord is served in unlimited opulence, whereas in Goloka, the Lord is served in natural affection.
Yeah.
So I think I'm not sure about the difference between unlimited opulence and natural affection.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, there those final sentences of the first paragraph. Thanks for that question. So, yeah. So the Vaikuntha is kind of like, Krishna and his queens. They're served and worshipped as like king and queen, and like that, and with all sorts of opulence. So that's wonderful, because as you quoted Satchidananda Swami, we're all gonna worship ourselves. We're gonna worship. We might not call it worship, but whether it's a political figure or sports or entertainment or or our professor. Okay, so we have that propensity. So we're encouraged to direct it towards God. Then we're satisfied. Okay, so there are pure personalities in Vaikuntha. Then even, you might say, an even deeper, fuller purity is the Goloka Vrindavan, where they're so in love with Krishna, but it's not, it's not a material love. Yeah, they're so in love that they're forgetting that they're in what's called yoga maya. It's a spiritual illusion, forgetting Krishna's God. And Krishna appreciates that even more than oh God, you are so great. I got the cowherd boys. We beat you at wrestling and jumping on Krishna, and now you have to carry us. And the gopis getting angry because you're giving too much attention to this, and Mother Yashoda chasing him with a stick. That gives Krishna more pleasure than being worshipped with awe and reverence. Basic example, like a this world example. Okay, so maybe let's say there's a CEO, and Prabhupada actually tells this example. There was apparently some big personality, maybe political or business personality. It was in London, and Prabhupada tells a story that he heard from somewhere. And okay, so someone came to have a meeting with this, very influential personality, and the secretary said, "Okay, well, he's busy now, so you wait." So he was waiting for a while, and the secretary left, and then when no one was looking, he looked in the door, and this big personality was carrying, he had like his 4-year-old son on his back, and he was playing horsey. Okay, so you can see like okay, have another meeting. Okay, that's nice. So maybe someone wants to do a bill, praise me to do a deal, but like his real love was 3-year-old son. So similarly, the example, I think it's from Prabhupada too. So maybe a very affluent person, a wealthy person, maybe they have a very impressive art collection, art pieces worth tens of thousands of dollars, right? And they have it there and in their home, and maybe they have a special studio. Yeah, it's like that. Okay, and then their 5-year-old comes home from kindergarten with some scribble. Daddy, this is for you. Okay, so now the dad doesn't need this scribble, right? It's really not quality art. It's not, okay? It's not quality art, but he might put it like front and center. Maybe he'll put it on the door of his office, because of all the pieces of art, this one is most dear to, because it was done for him with love and devotion, like that. So with those, the Goloka Vrindavan, it's not about opulence like that. It's just like, it's the purest love. In Vaikuntha, it's not impure. It's based on you are so great. So Krishna gets more pleasure in his relationships with the residents of Vrindavan, which is based on natural affection. Thank you, Casey.
I have a technical question. Of course, I didn't hear the class about Shipal.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't there. But at the beginning of the 7th canto, Shpakshi asked Philip Goswami, how come Shishupal got to merge into the body of the Lord?
Yeah.
And then there is a narration of Jai and Vijay.
Yeah.
Jai and Vijay, they were the doorkeeper of Vaikuntha.
Yeah.
So how come Shishupal? Because that was the last life,
right.
The 3rd one. So at the 3rd one, they were supposed to go back to Vaikuntha as a doorkeeper.
Yeah.
How come it said that Shishupal didn't get to go to Vaikuntha, that he just merged into the Brahmajyoti?
Okay. Yeah.
It's technical, but
it's a technical
that's
question.
something that came up to me, like reading the.
Right.
And I wasn't here for the class a few days ago.
Yeah, and I did not address that technical question, okay. and I don't have conclusive. I seem to remember some lecture where Prabhupada addresses this. Also, we hear Shishu, Jai and Vijay, they came again as Jagai and Madai. Right?
Yeah, that wasn't part of their contract.
That was outside of the contract. Okay, so my understanding is that was a stage, merging into the Brahmajyoti as a stage towards going back to Vaikuntha. And so, there in the 7th canto, we hear about that particular stage. And yeah.
And here too.
Yeah, it's not unusual for devotees, because we say like devotional service is beyond the impersonal liberation, and that's true. At the same time, if we look at many devotees, their path back to Vaikuntha, back to Goloka, it's it's fairly common. They might be brief, but they make a stop in the Brahmagyoti. So that's my understanding of Shishupal and Jayant Vijay.
Brahmagyoti, come back here, then Vaikuntha?
Doesn't have to be. So my understanding with Shishupal, Brahmagyoti, and then Vaikuntha. But what you're saying, yeah, that's an unfortunately common route. And it relates to a verse in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam. Yene revindaksha vimukti maninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhayo aruya kritrena param padam tata patant yado nadrita yushmadangvaya. That describes that some who haven't developed much of any devotion, they might get Brahmagyoti realization, but because they're not satisfied, because it's the nature of the soul to devote ourselves to a person, then even though they have that peace that comes from Brahmagyoti realization, they're still, so if they don't have a taste for serving Vishnu or Krishna or Lord Ramachandra, they'll come back down to the material sphere and try to do some like sattvic service until, you know, maybe the next lifetime or many lifetimes, then they get like, okay, let me give myself to the devotional path, so I don't need to do this yo-yo thing, Brahmagyoti back here. Anandini.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class. I have a question, reflection, conflict that I would like to share, and that's so like in my life, recently I experienced a lot of sadness and grief and pain.
Yeah.
And now we're in this chapter of Uddhava, and he's experiencing a lot of grief and pain.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking that I couldn't feel his pain, but I don't think that's true, because I'm just feeling my own material pain. And it seems Uddhava, he's experiencing pain, but there's a lot of love and bliss in his experience too, which I lack.
Yeah.
And yeah, my conflict is that, so when I experience despair and I go to chanting or reading, I feel peaceful. Mm-hmm. As long as I chant and read, I'm peaceful. And when I stop, I'm back to the misery. And I'm looking at, so I chant this name of Krishna, and all I hear from Uddhava and Devaki and Yashoda, and like they are experiencing so much pain. So loving Krishna seems to mean or bring along pain of, like I was listening to Malini's class, the recording. So Devaki, she gave birth to Lord Krishna, but she missed out on all his childhood pastimes. Yeah. How painful is that? And Arjuna, he's needing to fight on the battlefield. How much pain is that to kill the grandfather? And yes, I'm just, I don't really know what the question is. I just feel there's conflict.
Conflict, yeah.
Do I really want to follow in the footsteps? And I don't have another option right now. I don't have a better idea, and I do experience relief from suffering when I chant or read. But then love of God, does that just mean more pain and more suffering? It's not very attractive.
That doesn't sound very inspiring for you. Yeah. Okay. Right. At the end of the purport, Prabhupada writes, Uddhava seemingly lamented that his own position was less than that of the warriors on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, because they had attained to Vaikuntha, whereas he remained to lament the disappearance of the Lord. So he's lamenting in pain. Yeah. We can think of Rukmini was the first wife of Krishna. Her first son was Pradyumna. He got kidnapped. I'm sure she assumed he was killed. So imagine that. And she has this intimate association with Krishna. Her child got kidnapped as a baby. I mean, yeah, okay. So I'm reminded in maybe what could seem more this worldly. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says to Krishna, anxieties undertaken in your service, I regard as the source of my greatest ecstasy. So that's, it's a distinction between material pain, suffering, shame, hurt, emptiness, and the spiritual pain, hurt, fear, and the spiritual form at the foundation of the spiritual form is indescribable joy. So that's the distinction. Lord Chaitanya prays, Yugayatam Nimeshena Chakshusha Pravashayatam Shignayatam Jagat Sarvam Govinda Virahiname. Oh Govinda, Virahiname, feeling your separation. I'm experiencing one moment to be like 12 years or more. I'm feeling all vacant. The whole universe is vacant. Oh, that's like existential despair. He seems practically suicidal. He's feeling empty. Okay. Oh yeah, I've experienced that too. Okay, but that emptiness, at the ground of that is loving, fulfilling spiritual bliss. And so there's material fear and there's spiritual fear. Right. So this bhakti path, it means at the goal, there's relationships, spiritual relationships. Relationships mean pain. And so it's about making that distinction. So Mother Yashoda is in such anxiety and pain that Krishna won't be protected. He'll be destroyed by the tornado demon, Trinavarta. He's eating dirt. He'll get sick. Right. So that pain, that suffering, anxiety, it's imbued with ever blissful spiritual rasa, the spontaneous play of divine devotion. So Malini has a comment.
I just want to make a comment to that what we know as pain is in duality, good and bad.
Yeah.
So because we're in duality, what we know as pain, we put it under
Bad. Yeah.
And the devotee's pain is out of duality.
Yeah.
So there's no more duality because it's absolute, it's spiritual. It's a spiritual sky by definition is absolute, devoid of duality. And thus, the pain is not associated with the duality of bad.
Yeah.
The pain is extensive, is connection, is presence with Krishna and all that.
Yeah.
It's
It's a key point. It's a key point. And Prabhupada makes that point in the purport. Oh, he killed Shishupal, that's bad. But like the peace that the yogis are looking for, the peace that the Gyanis are looking for, Shishupal got that. So it's just like Krishna is loving Shishupal by chopping off his head. Oh, so let me go chop off people's head and that's how I love them too. No, we don't want to imitate. Okay. But we see that's what it means. Krishna and the devotee, Suridam, Sarvadanam, Krishna is the best friend of all living entities. So following up what Malini said, that's a prayer. Lord Chaitanya says, Dvaite Bhaja Bhaja, Dvaite Bhaja Braja Jnana Sabu Manudam. This idea of good and bad in the material sphere, it's all a mistake, it's all illusion, it's all bad in a sense. And so that's why, that's myself.
The spiritual world is so good, and the material world is so bad.
So material, it is absolute, it's all bad. No, something good happened, but if it's alienating me from Krishna, it's actually bad. So it's like you said, Anandini, towards the end of your sharing, like, you don't have a better solution. And so for me, so when I'm feeling the despair and the empty, and all my material stuff, all my material grunges, I'm very grateful for this. I should be a lot more grateful, but I feel gratitude to have found this path that the Prabhupada gave us, because I know, it's not that there won't be struggle, but but it's a worthwhile struggle. And then as far as like coming to the level of Uddhava, I don't know, I've never had a problem with that one. Uddhava or Mother Yashoda or the gopis, feeling like I at least intellectually got like, no, this is this is joyful, right? Like sometimes, just as, crude metaphors, like in some programs we might do like anger release process. So angry, but like when someone gets into it, like this is blissful, this is joyful. Or again, just like analogies given, like an actor on a stage. So the actor might be in a rage, or the actor might be pitifully crying, and the audience, the actor, so into it, that is so skilled. But we know if we take a step back, the actor in a rage is experiencing such happiness, such joy, that he or she is getting to serve the world in this way by their talents. And behind that rage, there's so much fulfillment. So somehow I always got that part. Like I've never been scared of the material, of the spiritual suffering that the gopis experience, or the cowherd boys' anxiety. Just if I could get a drop of that this lifetime. So, and it's just my personal experience.
Thank you. That helps, especially the part of duality. Like the judgment that it's bad, suffering is bad. I'm just wondering how to get to the bliss, and when is it going to come steadily? So,
when is it going to come steadily? Yeah, that's a key word you added. Because when's the bliss going to come? I'll speak. The bliss comes now. I'm experiencing bliss here in this Bhagavatam discussion. Okay, I mean, I'm not claiming to be like at the depth of Uddhava's bliss, but like, compared to when I woke up this morning, or last night, I got into some funk. So this is joyful. This is it. Now steadily. Okay. So then steadily, I'm thinking like on the path, there's like, there's that place for the inspiration. And there's a place in this world, not even going to Mother Yashoda, Bhava, but like, there's a place for fear, right? So like the inspiration, the enthusiasm, cultivating love to accelerate on our path, like getting tired of going so slow. And then there's what Prabhupada said, his greatest anxiety is that his followers are not scared enough of Maya. And like that fear, not to debilitate me or just have me frozen, but that fear can help me see stumbling blocks. This envy in my heart. This complacency. Yeah, let that fear see like stumbling blocks on the path to get them out of the way. So the response might be theoretical, and I'm sure nothing new, but still to the extent that I give myself to the process, and to the extent that I rigorously follow the regular principles of freedom, at least try to chant attentively, then I experience myself more and more steady. Casey.
I had two experiences on the beginning that just came up for me during your sharing that I wanted to share. One was at Sadhu Sangha, I heard Jayaveta
Swami.
He said that the biggest obstacle to this path is thinking that there's something else, that there's like anything else that can be satisfying. And then the other thing I thought of was like, so I was in a relationship before that really wasn't like alive at all. And now I'm in a relationship where there's like at least a drop of Krishna consciousness. And there's been parts of this relationship where, I felt really heartbroken, or I felt like in separation, really like missing this person. And I just had like a moment of, and it's been painful, and I had like just a moment of realization that like I'd still prefer that than either nothing or like a relationship that didn't have Krishna, at least kind of trying to put Krishna at the center. And and that felt like choosing pain, in that moment. But it felt, I don't know, it just felt more joyful.
More alive.
More alive. It felt more alive. Yeah,
nice.
that was exactly it. Like just more alive than deadened. So yeah, those are just what came to me that I wanted to share.
Thank you, Casey.
I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thanks for that. I like that. The biggest obstacle is thinking there's something else.
Anything else, like another path, or like something that I'm going to enjoy right now.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's nice. That's helpful.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that. From Jayadra and so on. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of separated from the conversation we had, but connected with what we have heard. You say Prabhupada, was anxious about his disciple not being scared of Maya, Maya an illusion, and then thinking that there is something else. I have been in so many questions about doubt, question about the path of Krishna consciousness, and where is the path, and what is the path, and what is trying to find something else, because maybe I created that the past becomes stale in some ways, or all that. And this morning I had a clear realization that I want to be scared of hearing things that are not on the past, or that are seeking something within the past that seems not to be there, but that I can enjoy. Because there is also seeking spiritual enjoyment. I remember when I was a new Bhaktin, like Mother Jadurani, she said, you really want to enjoy Krishna consciousness. And at the time I didn't understand what it meant. But now I understand it more and more. Like that seeking of state, that seeking of a state, like seeking of like ecstasis, and seeking of like, how is that? It's material. It's just material. But it's nicer than seeking, those states through alcohol or sex. But it's still material.
Yeah.
And then this morning I was chanting and I was really praying to Srila Prabhupada, and it became clear that, okay, where I'm safe is at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada. Where I'm safe is that I'm going to read again and again and again Prabhupada's books. And pray to Prabhupada to reveal the knowledge that are inside. Because the experience of reading Srila Prabhupada books feel so sheltering to me. And both materially and spiritually, because like if it makes sense, because spiritually sometimes I'm more scared spiritually than I'm scared materially. I went through so much in my life, and I go, okay, what's next? Okay, that's the material world in a sense, but I'm more scared spiritually now to somehow take a path that look like the past, but not really the past, like that. And that's scare me on a deeper level, like really, really. And then, this morning I really recommitted that, I know where there is a safe place. And I don't know other places are safe or not. That's the thing, like I'm confused sometimes. Is it safe or not? I do want that, but maybe not, maybe yes. And I say, okay, well, because I don't know, I'm going to let it go. And I'm going to go to what I'm sure of, and only that. So that's connected with what you shared about Jayavata Maharaj sharing, and then the fear. That's what's happening for me.
Thanks for sharing. Thank you, Melanie. Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you mentioning that, because as I was reading the purport, it came to me like somewhere in this class I want to stress, read Prabhupada's books again and again. But I didn't, somehow I didn't go there. So I'm glad you went there, because we see like, Arjuna, he accepted Krishna as their authority. So Prabhupada is our current link to Krishna's parampara, to hear directly from Prabhupada. Actually, I'll share. Just yesterday night, I talked about a funk. I got into a funk, and I was scrolling on Facebook, and it wasn't like particularly decadent stuff, but it was worse than decadent stuff, because I was scrolling here and there, and it wasn't even like people were quoting Prabhupada, just all sorts of stuff like, he didn't say that. Stop saying that he said that.
Oh God!
So much. It's better to go to decade. Better if I watch the tennis match, right? Yeah.
Already.
Yeah, right. And just like
he also received letter of things, and I said, well, Prabhupada says that.
Well, obviously.
Oh, wow, I did some research. He didn't.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's why like the way I can be best friends to people is like encourage, like hear from Prabhupada directly.
It's so like
Yeah.
a sure thing.
Yeah.
Everything else is maybe, and maybe it's more attractive in some ways, but that's a sure thing.
It's a sure thing. Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Bringing that to this discussion. Yeah. As to hear from Prabhupada directly, and then we have the Shastra, because we talk about logic, experience, and then the Shastra, hear from Prabhupada directly, and his books, his lectures, like that. Then we know.
Now, what was something is that Prahlad Maharaj, like Srila Prabhupada gave us every single day we sing Srila prayer.
Yeah.
And Prahlad Maharaj's mood is so much about, it's not about me.
Mm.
It's like reading the book, praying for revelation to serve Krishna. And what's Krishna's service? What's Krishna's desire? It's to be one, for us to be one with Krishna's desire and the pure devotee's desire. And that desire is to reclaim all the fallen conditioned soul back to Godhead. So Prahlad Maharaj, like last night or so, I was reading, and his mood is so much not about my liberation, my advancement, my ecstasy, my whatever. His mood, Prahlad Maharaj, is so like not about that. It's like, I don't even want you, like, and Lama Sriyadeva was ready to give him that. He said, what do you want? I can give you everything, material and spiritual. Material and spiritual. Of course, material, we understand, like, okay, it's a piece of glass, it has no value, so of course he will not ask. But will we ask for something spiritual? And is that motivation spiritual too, like we want to see? And Prahlad Maharaj clearly says, no, I don't want anything for myself. But I want that all the living entities, all the conditioned soul, all the souls that are away from you, come back to you. Yeah. And that's what I want. That's what I want.
Yeah. And that we say, I want to please Krishna. Krishna says that sharing mood, that's what pleases me the most. He's very clear. Yaidam paramam guyam man bhatesh vabhidashiti bhakti mai pram kritva mamevesha yasamshay. Is that there's no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nachatasman manushi, like that. That's Prabhupada's mood. And then, it's not in the name of preaching we neglect our personal cultivation of Krishna consciousness.
No.
At the same time, in the name of my spiritual life, it's not about self-absorption. It's just like, let me get out of myself. How can I share this philosophy? How can I share the practice of chanting? Yeah, and that requires trust. That requires faith. That, but if I'm not taking care of myself like that, no, this is the best way to take care of ourselves.
Well, I take care of myself for the sake of being a purer instrument of Krishna. So I take care of myself, the desire to be a pure devotee or to be in that pure bhakti, like to be desiring pure devotional service, but not because of me. Because if it's because of me, it's I and mine, and it's material. But because I want, like, pure, by desiring pure bhakti, then I desire to get outside of my way for the deliverance to, of the people in material consciousness. Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. Anandini.
While hearing this, I'm thinking about the balance, and like for me to pray for the spiritual advancement or the liberation of the suffering living entities. It's just that, to just want that and nothing for myself, it's not true and it's not authentic. And I'm thinking, well, Prahlad, he had this steady connection with Krishna, so why pray for that? He doesn't need to pray for that anymore. He has it. And I just recently, someone shared a letter when Srila Prabhupada wrote about keeping the preaching and not being disappointed if no one comes and listens. And just like appreciating the endeavor of his devotees. And at the end, he wrote a sentence like, but I don't have it word for word, but in the sense of, but like, I don't know if you said liberate yourself or save yourself.
Yeah.
Save yourself is more important. And that really spoke to me coming from this place of always like maybe thinking of others first.
Thanks for that. Thanks for bringing in that balance. Yeah, but there's letters where, because I save all living entities, and then it can be like an imitation of Prahlad Maharaj. And then Prabhupada would go to save yourself first. Save yourself first. There was a leader in Prabhupada's movement, and I heard this from someone else who was close with him back maybe around 78, 79. And this leader was very influential and, like that. And he had done so much service. But then at one point, others around him were saying, like, he doesn't seem to be chanting his rounds. and then at one point they caringly asked him about it. And he said, like, Arjuna didn't chant rounds. He was on the battlefield, with his bow and arrow. So I'm on the front lines. And of course, very shortly after that, he wasn't practicing at all. And because like that. So sometimes Prabhupada would focus on get out there, be creative, rack your brain how to share. And sometimes he would focus on save yourself first, save your self first.
There is an analogy. I don't think it comes from Prabhupada, but I heard it many times, of in airplane when the bag fall, like they tell you put the oxygen on you first before you put it on the children. Dependence.
Right.
So with spiritual life, I think it's more a consciousness than really. Of course, we want to take care of ourselves. We want to endeavor to read Srila Prabhupada books and chant attentively and take care of our health to serve Krishna. Because if the consciousness becomes too self-absorbed, then that's not going to serve us anyway. We are going to get sicker and more weak because that's self-absorption. So it's not about becoming a master or over sacrifices, but it's about like knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing in self-care. Like, okay, yes, I'm putting the oxygen mask on myself, because if I put the oxygen mask on the other person and then I collapse, what's the point? I'm not going to be of help for anyone. So, like that's the balance and the consciousness. Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. Prabhupada does use that airplane analogy, pretty much. It maybe uses that exact one, but he definitely uses the one in this. His first plane flight was 1967 and like that. And he took lots of plane flights after that. But he uses the one, he goes like, when they give the safety instructions, no one pays attention. He goes, but if there's turbulence, what do I do? What do I do? So it's a similar, like material world, the nature of Maya is, everything's fine. But then like when maybe there's someone near to us dies or there's some calamity in our life, okay, then people are going to pay more attention to what do I do to get out of this place? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's always turbulence. Yeah. There's always turbulence, but the nature of Maya is like, no, it's smooth sailing. But then when the turbulence becomes severe, then it's like, oh, okay, what did Bhagavatam say again? Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna, thank you.